future doctors. Welcome back to Best Medicine's GCSE AQA Biology lecture series. Today, we're going to be talking about the fossil evidence of evolution. In this short video, we're also going to be talking about the classification of organisms according to their physical as well as genetic characteristics. Now, board examiners for AQA, they want you to know how fossils are formed, what are different kinds of fossils, and what is the fossil evidence of evolution. Now, here's the thing. Fossils, when well preserved, reveal what ancient creatures look like, right? And that's how we know how dinosaurs look like. We have so many museums containing dinosaur skeletons, as well as mammoth skeletons and ancient shark skeletons and so on. And we're able to devise that different fossils fossils at different stages of a species or different eras of a particular species look different. So they also show how living organisms have evolved over time, right? Even though the exact origin of life still remains a mystery. So that is the fossil evidence of evolution. Here's a picture. This is a very important picture to help you understand how the fossil evidence works. Now, you could have different fossils from different eras, right? Using carbon dating, for example, we can find out the age of fossils. So carbon dating will help us find the age of fossils, and once we have that, we find out that actually the older fossils are lesser developed than the more recent fossils. One way is to use the carbon dating. Another is that older fossils will be buried deeper underground. So you'll have fossil here, fossil there, right? So obviously this is older, and this is relatively newer because it's present closer to the Earth's surface. That's one of the reasons. Another reason is, again, the carbon dating that we can do to find out the age of fossils. So once we take these fossils out of the ground, we discover that the older the fossil is of an organism, the less complex it is, right? The more simple it is, and less adapted it is to the current modern-day environment. For example, we can look at the example of a horse. Now, horse's fossil, the oldest ancestor that we can sort of think of was very, very small, and it had toes. A total of 4 here and 1 at the back, right? Now, as time went onwards and we started looking at more recent fossils, we discovered that over time, the horse started to grow its size, right? Probably to get adapted towards running long distances, to avoid predators, and to be able to search for grass. So it developed longer legs to be able to run faster, developed muscles to be able to run faster and longer, and grew its size. So over time, the horse becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually the most recent fossils reveal the modern horse, which has the largest muscles, has a single toe, and literally is just adapted for running. So that is the fossil evidence of evolution. Right, here's another fossil. So what is a fossil? Fossil essentially is just the remains of plants and animals, and you could have many different kinds of fossils and many different kinds of formations. So fossils essentially are remnants of organisms from thousands of years ago, and these are typically found in rocks, trapped in rocks. So here's a meme for you guys. Me finds my first fossil and everybody at the cemetery. Okay, so how are fossils formed? Number one, we have gradual replacement by minerals. So basically what this means is that you have essentially the bones that are trapped inside rocks. And those bones are eventually replaced by mineral salts, creating rock-like replicas of the original structures. Okay? So hard parts like teeth, shells, and bones, which don't actually decay easily, they can get trapped in this heat, dirt, and be exposed to a lot of pressure. And over time, due to chemical reactions, those bones can be replaced by rock-like replicas, mineral replicas of the original structure, of the original bone, leaving behind a sediment of minerals, right? Which tells you the exact shape of the original fossil. So that is, this particular process, by the way, is called petrification, okay? Petrification. And for this, I have a meme for you guys. At first, I was afraid, the dinosaurs, right? At first, I was afraid. Later, I was petrified. Petrification. Get it? Casts and impressions. Another type of fossil is that you only have a cast or an impression of an organism, like a footprint, like a maybe even the Bigfoot's footprint, something like that, right? Just an impression of an organism that used to be there. So fossils can form when organisms are buried in soft materials like clay. Now, as the organism decays, the clay hardens around it, leaving a cast, right? So the cast gives you the shape of the organism that used to be present in that particular rock or piece of soil. So burrows and roots can also be preserved in this way. Footprints especially can leave impressions in soft materials, which then harden and preserve the shapes. We have many examples of these footprints that we find in many different places. And number 3 is preservation in places where decay does not occur. And this is quite common among scientists, and usually shows up on social media and Facebooks and everything, where they discover completely preserved species or completely preserved even human beings sometimes, and it's all over the news occasionally once they discover someone like that. So preservation in places where decay doesn't occur. How does this work? Well, essentially, if you have amber or tar pits, they preserve organisms. How? By preventing decay. So you have essentially an area which prevents decay. How can you prevent decay? Decaying microbes such as fungi and bacteria need oxygen and moisture to function. So if you don't have oxygen and moisture, for example, if it is trapped in amber, then or it is trapped, for example, in peat bogs, which are too acidic for the bacteria to work, then you would have preservation. Glaciers, for example, are too cold to decay microbes for decay microbes to function, and therefore inside glaciers, inside ice, as well as inside peat bogs, you could have trapping of even entire human beings. A very popular example is peat marsh. Peat marsh is a person who was discovered fully preserved, and he was found in a peat bog. Here's another meme. A fossil of a turtle the size of a car has been unearthed in South America. And here's Mr. Carlos for scale. Carlos is the standard unit of measurement. That's a huge fossil for a turtle. Very big. Okay, the mystery of life's origin is still a mystery. Fossils show how life has evolved, but they don't actually explain its beginnings, right? Where did life come from? Well, we're talking about life, right? We're not talking about matter. Matter came from, apparently, it is theorized, from the Big Bang theory, that there was a Big Bang and it created the known matter, electrons, protons, and neutrons, and elements. And eventually, those elements would form organic materials, and then those organic materials or molecules would eventually go ahead and combine together to start forming very simple life structures like RNA and DNA, and then those would eventually become cells, and so on. However, proving these theories is difficult due to limited evidence, so it's not a very high-yield topic. It usually doesn't come up in biology, but the Earth's early atmosphere is an important topic in AQA GCSE chemistry. Okay? AQA GCSE chemistry has a very important topic called Earth's early atmosphere. And if you don't know that one, very well, then just send us a message and we can cover that. And yeah, so here's a meme. Remember Littlefoot? Remember Littlefoot? This used to be my favorite dinosaur. This is him now. Do you understand? It's become a fossil fuel. Okay, here's a little bit of a review of extinction. Remember extinction, right? It is the permanent loss of a species when the last of the species dies, right? When the last individual dies. Eliminating its presence on Earth. So the causes of extinction, again, could occur due to new predators or new diseases or competition, for example, invasive species, or natural disasters, for example, meteors, which were theorized to have wiped out the dinosaurs. Here's a meme for you guys, so. Extinction, the truth. So, all this time, it was Chuck Norris. The extinction of the dinosaurs, 65 million BC, colorized. Okay, that's how the dinosaurs actually got extinct. I see. A little bit of a review of antibiotic resistance, just to cover it formally in its own portion, because I want to discuss how to decrease the chances of developing antibiotic resistance. It's a very important topic. Also, for your exams, you should know, as well as being an educated person, you should know that antibiotic resistance is dangerous, and you should try to avoid it, avoid developing it, and guide other individuals as well around you to prevent this from happening. So, antibiotic resistance bacteria, are rapidly dividing by binary fission. Because they're rapidly dividing, during this cell division, the DNA is constantly replicating, right? To go from one cell to another. Remember, binary fission is that you have bacteria and then it replicates its DNA. So this bacteria has DNA, and then it's going to go ahead and have two copies of DNA, right? And then each of those copies is going to go into two daughter cells, bacteria. So during this DNA replication process, what can occur is that you could have errors in DNA replication, resulting in mutations. So those mutations can, by chance, give the bacteria a resistance against the antibiotic. Now, these bacteria are very dangerous because traditional antibiotics might not work on them, and so on. So how can we decrease the chance of developing antibiotic resistance? Well, number one we can do is finish the course of antibiotics. Because if you don't finish the course, then that will leave off some of the bacteria, which can eventually develop resistance against future antibiotic use of the same type. Using antibiotics only for serious infections. If you start abusing them for very minor viral infections like a flu, then that's not good, right? That increases the chance of bacteria being exposed to the antibiotic and developing resistance. So you want to avoid overuse, and avoiding them for a minor cold that a healthy individual can go through with just Tylenol is a good approach. Number three, restricting agriculture use of antibiotics. Well, basically, if you stop using antibiotics or decrease the amount of antibiotic use for agriculture, this means that the bacteria that is in the animals as well as around the soil has a lesser chance of developing antibiotic resistance, right? This animal bacteria can pass this resistant genes to humans, human infecting bacteria as well, so that's a problem. So doctors always have this sort of competition going on between developing resistance and developing new drugs to be able to counter that resistance. And for this, we have a meme here, right? So overuse, resistance, misuse. Both of them give rise to antibiotic resistance. MRSA, which is methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. Staphylococcus aureus is a bacteria that causes multiple diseases, and it used to be sensitive to penicillins, certain types of penicillins, for example, methicillin. But now, because of overuse of methicillin, we have now MRSA, very popular, right? Methicillin-resistant Staph aureus. It is a popular severe disease-causing bacteria that is now resistant to penicillin types due to overuse, right? And so we have a big gun antibiotic that we use to overcome this. That's called vancomycin. You don't have to remember this, but just for knowledge. MRSA, you have to remember, okay? So vancomycin is what we use nowadays, and we do have some Staph aureus species that are also now becoming resistant to vancomycin, so that's a problem. So we have MRSA now as well. Okay, anyways, so let's come back to evolution. Identifying all these patterns, changes, similar traits, connections of species with each other allows us to group species together, right? To order them in relationships, in kind of like family trees. And that is called classification of organisms, okay? Classification of organisms. So essentially, we had this scientist named Carlos Linnaeus. Carlos Linnaeus, he was back in the day when we didn't have any DNA analysis and any very scientific techniques that we have nowadays. He was just simply observing by the naked eye, as well as using microscopes, the similarities and differences between species. And so by the physical eye observations and fossil observations and comparisons, as well as any other knowledge that he had, he created a system of classification called the Linnaean system of classification. Okay? Now this Linnaean system of classification sorts living things into a big family tree with levels like kingdoms, phylums, class, order, family, genus, and species to help us how they're all related. So for example, you could have multiple kingdoms, like animal kingdom. Let me just write that down here. So you could have animal kingdom, right? You could have kingdoms of plants. You can have kingdoms of fungi, right? You could have kingdoms of protists, kingdoms of prokaryotes, and so on. These 5 kingdoms, and then eventually these will give different phylums, right? For example, you could have vertebrates and invertebrates as phylums for animals. Over here we have vertebrates, and then those vertebrates can further be classified as mammals or birds or reptiles, etc. In this example we have mammals here, and then mammals can be of many different types, right? These can be carnivores, it can be herbivores, etc. And so this particular example shows carnivores, and then carnivores can be of so many different types, right? You could have bears, you could have wolves, families, and you could have dogs, and so on. And eventually you get a genus, and then eventually you end up with the specific species. So how do you remember this particular order, right? From kingdom to phylum to class, order, family, genus, species. How are you able to remember this? Well, I'll give you a mnemonic to use this, okay? I'll give you a mnemonic. Very easy is that you use this particular mnemonic to remember this order. You're supposed to know this order, that's all. All you need to know is this order and some other things that I'll tell you in a bit. So the order is, you start with deer for domain, but we're going to talk about this in a bit. Domain does not apply to the Linnean classification system. It's going to be related to the 3-domain classification that we're going to do in a bit. Dear King Philip, hopefully you guys can remember this particular sentence. Dear King Philip came over for good soup. Okay? So D for domain, K for kingdom, right? P for phylum, C for class, O for order, F for family, G for genus, and S for species. Okay? Dear King Philip came over for good soup. Dear King Philip came over for good soup. Domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. Now, the Linnean system, the classification system by Carlos Linnaeus, was presented or developed in the 1700s. That was a very long time ago. We only had microscopes, and we had some data about physical observations and some data about fossils, but we did not have DNA analysis. So that's not a very good comparison about relationships, right? We would not be able to accurately relate the genetic linkages between different species together. Nowadays, because we do have DNA analysis, we have the genetic analysis due to computers and better technology, we're able to better find out what is related and what is not. And so that brings us to the 3-domain system. So the Linnean classification system eventually was replaced by the 3-domain system. Okay, the 3-domain system. Why was it replaced is a very high yield 2 marker that comes up. So in the exam, they can ask you, why was the Linnean classification system replaced with the 3-domain system? And the answer to this is because nowadays we have an availability of increased genetic evidence. And how do we have this? Due to DNA analysis. Okay? Make sure that when you write this word, the answer, you put the word DNA analysis in there. Okay? DNA analysis is your keyword to tell them why the 3-domain system eventually took over the Linnean classification system. Okay? The person who proposed the 3-domain system was Mr. Carlos Vos. Okay, Carl Vos proposed the 3-domain system in the 1990s. Very recent, right? And this is because the DNA analysis actually revealed that the 2 different kinds of prokaryotes, which are bacteria and archaea, were actually very, very different from each other. They're not actually closely genetically linked. As a matter of fact, the archaea is much closer to the eukaryotes than it is to bacteria. And so he proposed that we should split them apart, right? We should remove them from prokaryotes and actually make 3 groups: eukaryotes, bacteria, and archaea. And so we get the 3 domains. Bacteria is a domain, archaea is a domain, and eukaryotes is the third domain. And then eventually eukaryotes will be divided into different kingdoms, like kingdoms of plant, animals, fungi, right? Things like that. And protists and so on. So we have the three domains. And in this particular tree as well, you can see that archaea is branching off near the eukaryotes rather than bacteria. Very much of a difference between bacteria and archaea. What are archaeas? We have to understand what archaea is. Archaea is prokaryotes. These are prokaryotes, and these are primitive bacteria. And so because these are primitive, they you could assume that they are used to the Earth's early environments. The Earth's early environments, remember, had very extreme conditions, like very high temperatures and very weird sort of gases going on and so on. So archaea, being primitive bacteria, are adapted to live in very extreme conditions, okay, like volcanoes and natural geysers. For example, this place here. They're extremophiles. Extremo means extreme. Extremo means, something that is excessive. And philes means loving. So they love extreme environments, like very acidic or very hot or very cold. For example, geysers and volcanoes and so on. And so archaea kind of reside there. Okay, these are primitive bacteria. Very simple. The archaea are not always extremophiles. Extremophiles don't always have to be archaea. You could also have any other thing that loves to live in an extreme environment. That's an extremophile. Okay, this is just a term that is used to describe something that loves extreme environments. This is not completely associated with archaea. Okay, the archaea are extremophiles. Now, one thing that we want to do here is we want to understand how to name a particular species. Okay, how do we come up with the Latin name of a particular species? You're supposed to know this. So you don't have to know, maybe you should know what the kingdoms are. I've already given you what the kingdoms are: animals, plants, fungi, protists, and prokaryotes, for example, right? You would not have prokaryotes in the three domain system because you split them apart into bacteria and archaea, but you would have the rest: protists, animals, fungi, and plants. You don't have to memorize any of the phylums, you don't have to memorize any of the classes, order, family, genus, or species at all. They will give you this information in the exam, right? Somehow. Either they give you a species name or they give you a particular set of information and ask you to present them with the species name. So how do we come up with the species name? Let me just give you the order here. So the way to name species is that you write the genus name first. You write the genus name first and the species name afterwards. Okay? So first you write the genus name and then you write the species name, and that's really it. For example, let's talk about dogs, right? If they give you in the exam that there's an organism whose kingdom is Animalia, so that's animal kingdom, and phylum is Chordata, which is essentially vertebrates, but you don't need to know that. Class is mammals, and order is carnivores, and family is Canida, and genus is Canis, and species Familiaris. Then what is a species name? Well, the species name should be very simple. Remember, the rule is you write the genus name first and then the species name later. So if they give you this information in the exam, you can go ahead and write genus name Canis, right? Plus species name Familiaris here, right? And you get Canis familiaris. That is the species name. They can also give you this particular name and ask you what is a genus or what is a species. And for that, right, they might not give you what is the genus and what is the species, and they give you this name. And so in that case, all you have to do is say Canis is the genus and Familiaris will be the species, if this is the scientific name, the binomial name of this particular organism. Okay? And yeah, so that concludes this particular lesson. We have a family tree, but we've already done these previously in inheritance, and really, if you don't understand a family tree, I'm not sure. Like, these are very, very simple, and these are self-explanatory. Like, you have an organism here, and then it eventually goes one way and the other way, and evolves into multiple species, and then those multiple species evolve into multiple species, and so on, right? There's no explanation required for this. So if you really don't understand this, no, I'm sure you understand this. There's no way. Okay, so that ends this short little video, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the last final chapter, chapter number 7 of the series. Alright, and so if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments, and you can buy these notes by contacting through the WhatsApp link provided below. And of course, if you want private coaching for your specific needs, then you can contact us right now using the WhatsApp link provided below. Okay? Have a good one, you guys. Happy studying!